My name's Michael Mellamphy, and I'm taking inspiration from my dreams. The following monologue is one that I entitled Italian Roasted Coffee and Steroids. It came to me in a dream. It was a fairly memorable scene. Memorable really only as it was a scene maybe from my youth. Somewhere recognisable, like a school hall in Cork. I was in a group, surrounded by other groups, as though we were all to be pitted against one another, a la the Hunger Games. Strange thing about my group is, I hadn't met my fellow group members just yet. The other groups were wearing colours, I suppose to differentiate each team. I was doing a fair bit of walking around the auditorium.
Hi, I'm George. You must be Michael.
A firm American voice, but quite friendly and soft in an unthreatening way, sounded behind me. I turned around, like quick on the draw type of thing, and was greeted by the kind face of George Clooney, sipping a Lavazza espresso coffee with a raised pinky finger.
Welcome to my team.
He gave me a bro type of hug, and I felt all warm inside. I thought of Arabica beans and dark, rich, slow-roasted coffee, because although he is of Hollywood royalty, I do love him in those coffee commercials. I spent a good time with George. Time seemed to pass by as I recounted to him a story by another friend of mine called George about the time he met him at a party in the Hollywood Hills, and they discussed their shared Irish ancestry. Hollywood George smiled and looked as though he too remembered that conversation in Katy Perry's kitchen with my Limerick George friend. Mr. Clooney was indeed a very nice, approachable man. We were both dressed in black in a kind of Steve Jobbish type of way. Very, very cool. Next up was Simone Biles and her twin sister, or maybe I was just seeing double. All decked out in a black shiny leotard with gold medals hanging off their necks. The medals seemed to smile and wink at me, like they knew they were already winners. She and the twin, or the twin and her, came bounding into our group with a split double axel somersault and gave a wave to the adoring crowd. We were now on a stage surrounded by other groups who didn't seem to have any famous faces. If there's physical shit going on, then we've a good chance here with double Biles in our team. Then, one of my heroes of my youth, Dr. Ruth Westheimer, came walking towards us, all clad in black of Team Clooney too, with "Use it or lose it" bedazzled in multicoloured rhinestones across her chest. She gave a wave to the cheering crowd, blowing them all sorts of air kisses. I went in for a bro hug, the likes that Mr. Clooney had bestowed on me earlier. But Dr. Ruth, she wasn't having any of it. She offered her elbow to bump, a sign that she was one of the ordinary people who knew the importance of social distancing and keeping apart. The pandemic can get you in your dreams too, I suppose. Plus, she's a doctor, so she can't be going around breaking protocol, I thought to myself. The final addition to our team was none other than Sylvester Rambo Rocky Stallone, the Italian stallion himself. I say Rambo Rocky as he was very much the Sly Stallone from the 80s. He wore black, tight-fitting yoga pants that belonged to my girlfriend Jessica and a black headband, so we could definitely tell he was in our team because of the black. His chest was bare and his veins were ripping and popping out of his biceps, triceps and pecs. A sure sign of steroid use. He was really up for whatever competition that faced us. I was a little disappointed as he was a little aloof, or maybe that was just his focus. Simone and her twin were warming up by doing a split on roller skates. Stallone was sweating profusely and George was just smiling and sipping his Lavazza espresso. I wasn't sure where Dr. Root had gone. A loud horn went off and pandemonium ensued. People started rushing everywhere, running in all directions. I had been so starstruck by my teammates that I forgot to ask what the fuck I was doing here and what the rules of the game was. Sly must have sensed my fears as he grabbed me by the shoulders and said, "Make man, just run and don't look back. Run to the drinking section. You're our guy for the holding your alcohol competition." I didn't know if I should be offended, as the only Irish person in the group being the go-to guy for such a competition seemed strangely stereotypical and tropish. Surely in this day and age, such stereotypes couldn't exist anymore, especially as it has been found that alcoholism isn't something that can be attributed to one or any particular race or culture, but it tends to surface in groups who suffer the effects of post-colonial behaviour over centuries of systemic abuse. But on the other hand, I did think that it sounded like a bit of crack, especially as I just committed to dry January and I was dreaming, so fuck it, why not? The pathway to holding your drink competition was completely packed. There was a clamour of very confused people in different coloured shirts. Above me, Simone Biles and her twin were doing very well in the double bars competition as they soared in tandem through the air in what now looked like the big top at a circus I went to when I was 6 with my dad. I still couldn't see Dr. Ruth, but I could hear her voice as she gave tips on how to put a condom on a banana. I wanted to ask if the banana should be peeled first or not, but there wasn't enough time. Sylvester was heading in the same direction as me for the arm wrestling competition. In real life, I had consigned his movie Over the Top to the slop tray of my brain, but in dreamland, all those long hidden shameful bits and pieces from the dark corners of your memory can and will come rushing back at you. Like the time you caught a look at Martin O'Shaughnessy's mam hanging her red panties on a clothesline and thought about sniffing them every time you played Commodore 64 in Martin O'Shaughnessy's house for a year after, even though you were only 9 at the time. But I digress. Through a twisted turn of good fortune, the arm wrestling competition was being held at the tent right next door to the hold your alcohol table. But the crowds were too big. It was impossible for me to get through. Then Stallone started picking up people and hurling them over his head. His insatiable appetite for arm wrestling, or maybe it was the excessive steroids in his system, kicked in and he lifted folks out of it like they were merely pillows, one by one at first, then two by two, and on, until eventually he resembled a vein-popping hamster chasing a piece of avocado toast in Brooklyn on a wheel that was creating a waterfall of colour-clad J.Crew models flying across the top of the big top, with double biles clad in gold medals dazzling my eyes. Somewhere I could smell George sipping his Lavazza espresso while driving a moped, and Dr. Root had moved on to cucumbers. Sly smiled at me as I grabbed a can of Murphy's and raised a bottle of JMO to my lips. "Are you awake, honey?" Jessica asked me. "No, I'm drinking with Rambo," I said, as the sleep drool trickled down my pillow cheek onto my chin. It formed a pool thereat and cooled beneath my lip. Inspired by a dream. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine.